My daughter stole $750,000 from me using my personal information to buy an apartment. But when I showed up on her moving day and found her inside, she asked how I had gotten in. I smiled, pointed to the court officer standing at the door, and said with a court order, dear. In that moment, her face went completely pale, and I knew my time for revenge had come. I'm Deborah. I'm 68 years old, and I never thought my own blood would betray me in such a cruel way. Sarah, the daughter I raised alone since she was 5, the girl I worked double shifts for 20 years, for the young woman whose college and wedding I paid for, had just destroyed my financial life without even blinking. It all started a month ago with a phone call that shattered my soul. It was the bank demanding immediate payment for the first installments of a massive loan. Mrs. Deborah, you have 3 overdue payments of $12,000 each. The executive yelled at me. $12,000 a month. My entire pension is $800. I begged him to check again that it had to be a horrible mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. The documents were perfect. My signature forged flawlessly. My information used without my knowledge. My credit history destroyed forever. And the apartment registered completely in my name in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. An apartment I had never seen or even dreamed of. When I found out it was Sarah, my world collapsed. I called her trembling with rage and pain. How could you do this to me? I screamed, crying. Her answer sent a chill down my spine. It was necessary, Mom. Your credit was just sitting there unused. Michael and I needed that apartment for our future. My credit was just sitting there unused. As if my 68 years of life, my 4 decades of honest work, my reputation built penny by penny, were just resources available for her whims. Sarah, they're going to foreclose on me. They're going to take my house. Do you understand? I pleaded desperately. Oh, Mom, you're always so dramatic. She laughed cruelly. Your little old house is worthless compared to this investment. Besides, you're too old to live alone. You could come live with us and take care of our future children. Take care of their future children. After stealing my financial stability, they wanted to turn me into their free nanny. And what if I can't make the payments? I asked, my heart breaking. Well, you'll have to figure it out, Mom. Maybe sell some of your little things, or ask the neighbors for help, I don't know. Selling my little things, my memories, my furniture, my dignity, all to pay for their golden dream built on my nightmare. What Sarah completely ignored, what her arrogance prevented her from seeing, is that I am not the helpless old woman she thinks I am. For 40 years, I worked day and night, saved every possible penny, and built a nest egg that I kept secret. Bank accounts she knows nothing about, investments I made to protect my old age, enough resources to teach her who's really in charge here. Michael, her manipulative boyfriend, had been the mastermind behind it all. He had researched my information, planned the fraud, and convinced Sarah that I was too old and foolish to notice. How wrong they both were. I couldn't sleep that night. My daughter's words echoed in my head like knives. I decided it was time to act. The next day I hired the best lawyer in the city. Not just any lawyer, but Daniel Hayes, the same one I had seen on TV tearing apart million-dollar fraud cases. When I told him my story, his eyes lit up with outrage. Mrs. Deborah, this isn't just fraud, it's a federal crime that could cost your daughter 10 to 15 years in prison, he told me firmly. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was taking me seriously. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to act as if nothing had happened. She posted photos on social media from the apartment, showing off every corner like a princess in her castle. My new home, she wrote with heart emojis. The comments from her friends turned my stomach. You're so lucky. You deserve it. What a beautiful apartment. If only they knew that every brick in those walls was paid for with a mother's stolen future. Michael was worse. He had started calling me every couple of days with a sickeningly sweet fake voice. Dearest mother-in-law, we want to invite you to dinner to celebrate our new home. He would say it like we were one big happy family. Sarah made your favorite dish. My favorite dish paid for with my own stolen money. The hypocrisy made me sick. During those forced dinners, they acted like the perfect hosts in my own apartment. Michael would serve expensive wine while condescendingly explaining the advantages of the investment. Mrs. Deborah, this neighborhood is going to appreciate so much. In 5 years, this place will be worth double. He spoke as if he were doing me a huge favor, as if stealing my identity was an act of kindness. Sarah was even crueler. "Mom, stop making that victim face. This benefits all of us. When we have kids, you'll have a place to stay when you can no longer take care of yourself. When I can no longer take care of myself." As if at 68 years old I was a mentally invalid waiting for their charity. One night during one of those unbearable dinners, Michael dared to say something I will never forget. "Ma'am, you should be grateful. We could have taken out the loan in our names, but we decided to use yours to protect our credit history. It's a sign of trust." Trust. He called the most blatant theft I had ever seen a sign of trust. "And what if I can't pay?" I asked, feigning concern. Sarah sighed like a spoiled child. "Oh, Mom, we already told you we'll take care of it. You just have to sign a few more papers when we ask you to." A few more papers. They wanted me to continue being their automatic signature for future scams. That night when I returned home, I called Daniel. "I need to speed things up. I can't take this humiliation anymore." His response calmed me. "Mrs. Deborah, we already have enough evidence. Tomorrow we file the criminal complaint and the civil lawsuit. We'll also request a lien on the apartment to freeze the asset. But I wanted more than just legal justice. I wanted Sarah to feel exactly what she had made me feel. I wanted her to experience the humiliation, the fear, the feeling of her world collapsing without control. That's why I decided to keep my true financial resources a secret for a little longer. The next day, Sarah called me ecstatic. "Mom, I have incredible news. Michael got a super important work contract. Now we'll be able to make all the payments no problem." No problem. As if the problem was the ability to pay and not the fact that they had ruined my life. "And what about my legal situation?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Oh, Mom, don't worry about that. Michael says those legal issues are just red tape. As long as we make the payments, no one will bother us. Just red tape. Fraud was just red tape to them." That same afternoon, while they were celebrating Michael's new job on social media, I was at the prosecutor's office signing the formal complaint. The prosecutor, a serious man named Stephen, looked at me with respect and determination. "Mrs. Deborah, we're going to get back every penny they stole from you, and we're going to make sure they pay for every tear they made you cry." For the first time in months, I smiled for real. The criminal complaint was accepted immediately. Prosecutor Stephen explained that they had a solid case document, forgery, bank fraud, and identity theft. "Mrs. Deborah, your daughter and her accomplice are facing charges that could add up to 20 years in prison," he said with satisfaction. 20 years. Sarah was 32. She would get out of prison an old woman if she got out at all. While the legal process moved forward, I decided to do something I had never done in my life, to truly investigate who my daughter was. I hired a private detective to find out everything about her recent life. What I discovered broke my heart and filled me with rage at the same time. Sarah hadn't just used my information for the apartment. For the last 2 years, she had been taking out smaller loans with my personal information. Credit cards, consumer loans, she had even tried to get a loan for a sports car that was rejected for lack of verifiable income. My daughter had turned my identity into her personal ATM. The detective also discovered something that destroyed me. Sarah had been laughing at me with her friends on social media. In a private WhatsApp group, there were screenshots of conversations where she mocked my naivety. "My mom is so dumb, she still thinks it was just the apartment," she wrote with laughing emojis. "Michael says we can get at least another $200,000 out of her before she figures it out." Another $200,000. They hadn't just ruined my present, they had detailed plans to completely destroy my future. In another message, Sarah wrote, "When she's no longer useful for loans, we'll put her in a nursing home and sell her little house. That area is becoming valuable too." Reading those messages, something inside me broke forever. The girl I had raised, for whom I had sacrificed my youth, my dreams, my opportunities. She hadn't just stolen my money, she had stolen my dignity, my peace of mind, and my right to grow old in peace. There was no turning back. That night I called my sister Rachel, who lives abroad. When I told her everything, she was silent for several minutes. "Deborah." I always suspected there was something off about Sarah. She was too manipulative, too calculating even as a child. But I never thought she would go this far. "Rachel, I need to ask you a very big favor. I said with a firm voice. I need you to wire money to my account from overseas. I want Sarah to see that I have resources she knows nothing about. My sister understood immediately. How much do you need? $2 million, just for a few weeks until I'm done with this. 2 days later, my main bank account showed a balance that even I couldn't believe. It was time to begin the second phase of my plan. I hired the best lawyers in the city, not just for my case, but to sue civilly for damages for a sum that tripled what they had stolen from me. I also hired a public relations firm specializing in reputation crises. If Sarah wanted to play social media games, I was going to teach her how it was really done. They began to document every post, every comment, every piece of evidence of how she had spent the stolen money while I suffered. But the masterstroke came when the bank informed me that as a victim of fraud, they had to immediately freeze all accounts related to the fraudulent loan. This included the apartment, which would be placed under a lien until the case was resolved. Sarah and Michael had exactly 48 hours to vacate the property. Sarah's call came at 6 a.m. She was hysterical, screaming and crying at the same time. Mom, you have to do something. They're kicking us out of the apartment. They say you filed a complaint. Her voice was pure panic. How could you do this to us? We're family. Family. After robbing me, humiliating me, and planning to destroy my old age, now she remembered we were family. Sarah, I said with a calmness I hadn't felt in months. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't plan to put their elders in a nursing home to sell their houses. The silence on the other end of the line was total. She knew that I knew she had discovered her messages. Mom, I can explain all that. She started to stammer. There's nothing to explain, Sarah. Tomorrow you have to hand over the keys to the apartment. I hope you enjoyed your house of cards because it just came tumbling down. The day of the eviction came faster than Sarah expected. I got up early, put on my best suit, and went to the apartment that was supposedly mine. I wanted to be there when the court officers arrived. I wanted to see my daughter's face when she realized that her dumb, helpless mother had orchestrated her downfall. When I arrived, I found Sarah and Michael desperately packing their things. He was sweating as he carried boxes, cursing under his breath. She was crying as she threw clothes into suitcases like a refugee fleeing a war. Seeing me, Sarah ran towards me, her eyes red from crying. Mom, please, you have to drop the charges. They're going to put us in jail, she pleaded, kneeling in front of me. I promise we'll pay you back everything, every penny, as if it were just a matter of money and not betrayal, humiliation, and destruction of trust. Sarah, you don't understand the gravity of what you did, I said firmly. You didn't just steal my money, you stole my peace of mind, my dignity, my right to grow old in peace. Michael approached with a grim face. Ma'am, you're exaggerating. We had the best intentions. The best intentions. The same man who had planned to use my identity for future fraud was now talking about good intentions. Michael, I know perfectly well what your intentions were. I have screenshots of all your messages where you made fun of me and planned to steal more money from me. His face went pale instantly. Sarah looked at him in horror. What messages, Michael? She asked with a trembling voice. You told me it was just the apartment. That's when she realized her boyfriend had used her too. Michael had been the mastermind of everything, but he had let Sarah be the face and take all the legal risks. My dear, I said with a cold smile, your little boyfriend lied to you just like you both lied to me. He knew you would be the one arrested first because everything is in your name. He planned to have you declared the sole guilty party and save himself. Sarah turned to Michael with a fury I had never seen in her eyes. Is that true? You were going to abandon me. The fight between them was epic. Michael tried to explain that it was all to protect their future together, but Sarah had already understood that she had been a pawn in his game. You convinced me my mom was a foolish old woman. You told me she would never find out, she screamed as she threw his belongings out the window. In the midst of that chaos, the court officers arrived. The lead officer, a serious man named Thomas, greeted me respectfully. Mrs. Deborah, we're sorry you had to go through this. We have an order to immediately evict these people and seal the apartment until the legal case is resolved. Sarah clung to my arm desperately. Mom, don't let them send me to jail. I'm your daughter. Forgive me. But it was too late for forgiveness. Sarah, when you planned to put me in a nursing home to sell my house, did you think about me being your mother? When you made fun of me with your friends, did you remember that I raised you alone? Her crying became hysterical. I never wanted to hurt you. Michael convinced me. He told me you had so much money you wouldn't even notice. So much money I wouldn't even notice. $750,000 that represented decades of work and sacrifice. Mrs. Deborah Officer Thomas said we need these individuals to vacate immediately. Would you like to inspect the property? I did. I wanted to see every corner of the apartment they had bought with my stolen future. I wanted to walk through the spaces where they had celebrated their smart investment while I suffered. The apartment was beautiful, I couldn't deny it. It had an ocean view, luxury finishes, imported appliances. Every detail had been paid for with my money, but they had lived here like kings while I lost sleep wondering how I was going to make the monthly payments. In the master bedroom, I found something that broke my heart. Photos of Sarah and Michael toasting with champagne the day they signed the fraudulent loan. In one of the photos, Michael had a mocking smile and was holding a glass while Sarah kissed my ID card. My own daughter had kissed my ID as if it were a winning lottery ticket. You can take them away now, I told Officer Thomas. I'm staying here to inventory everything they bought with my money. Sarah looked at me with one last desperate plea. Mom, when I get out of this, I'll show you I can change. But there was no turning back. That same afternoon, while Sarah and Michael desperately looked for a place to sleep, I settled into the apartment that legally belonged to me. It was ironic. For the first time in my life, I was living in a luxury place, but it had been bought with my own stolen money. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every decorative detail had been paid for with $750,000 I had never authorized to be spent. I hired a moving company to bring my things from my old house. I wanted the whole building to see that the elderly victim now lived in the most expensive apartment in the complex. The neighbors who had known Sarah as the successful young businesswoman now whispered in the hallways, wondering what had really happened. Rachel, my sister, arrived from abroad to support me through the whole legal process. When she saw the apartment, she couldn't believe Sarah was capable of so much. Deborah, this is sick. A daughter who steals from her own mother to live like a millionaire while leaving her in ruin. It's pure evil. But what really gave me satisfaction was the call I received from Gary, Michael's boss. Apparently, when he found out about the criminal charges against his employee, he fired him immediately. Mrs. Deborah, we cannot keep someone in our company who is being prosecuted for fraud. That would destroy our corporate reputation. Michael had lost the job he had bragged so much about. The super important contract that was going to solve all his problems evaporated as soon as his employers found out he was a criminal. Now he not only faced criminal charges, but was also unemployed and without professional references. Sarah called me several times a day from different numbers because I had blocked hers. Her voicemails were desperate. Mom, we're sleeping in the car. Please, we need to talk. I can fix all this. Sleeping in the car. From a luxury apartment to sleeping in an old Volkswagen. The fall had been spectacular. A week after the eviction, I decided to do something Sarah would never expect. I created my own social media profile. I hired a young digital marketing specialist named Vanessa to help me tell my story to the world. Mrs. Deborah, your case is going to resonate with millions of mothers who have been betrayed by their children. We're going to get digital justice. My first video went viral in less than 24 hours, titled My Daughter Stole $750,000 from Me. I told the whole story from the beginning, showing legal documents, screenshots of Sarah's mocking messages, and evidence of the fraud. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. What a brave woman. Your daughter is ungrateful. Justice for Mrs. Deborah. But the video that really destroyed Sarah was the second one. The things my daughter said about me while she was robbing me. There I showed all the conversations where she mocked my naivety, where she planned to steal more money from me, where she discussed putting me in a nursing home to sell my house. The level of cruelty was so shocking that even her own friends began to publicly criticize her. The media was quick to contact me. TV channels, radio stations, newspapers. Everyone wanted to interview the betrayed grandmother who reclaimed her dignity. Every interview I gave, every story I told was another nail in the coffin of my daughter's reputation. Sarah tried to defend herself by creating her own response video. Crying in front of the camera, she said it was all a family misunderstanding and that the media was distorting the truth. But it was too late. The comments on her video were brutal. "Thief. How could you do that to your mother? Give back the money, you shameless brat." The social pressure became unbearable for her. Her friends abandoned her. She lost her job as an image consultant, and even her own relatives began to turn their backs on her. My cousin Teresa called me to say, "Deborah, I always thought Sarah was a bit calculating, but this is beyond any limit. The family is with you." The breaking point came when Michael decided to abandon Sarah to save his own skin. He hired a lawyer who recommended he cooperate with the prosecution by providing evidence against her in exchange for a reduced sentence. My daughter discovered that the man for whom she had betrayed her mother was now betraying her. That night, Sarah showed up at the apartment door. She was gaunt with deep dark circles under her eyes, wearing the same clothes she'd had on for days. "Mom, please just 5 minutes. I need to explain something important." There was something different in her voice. It was no longer the arrogance of before, but pure desperation. I let her in not out of compassion, but because I wanted to see how far she had fallen. She sat on the sofa she had bought with my stolen money and began to cry like she hadn't cried since she was a child. "Mom." Michael left me. He turned me into the prosecution to save his own hide. I'm completely alone. "Sarah," I said firmly, "you chose to be alone when you decided to betray me, when you planned to steal more money, when you thought about putting me in a nursing home to sell my house. I never wanted to hurt you this much. It all got out of control." "It got out of control?" I asked incredulously. "Forging my signature got out of control. Making fun of me with your friends got out of control. Planning my future in a nursing home got out of control." Sarah was silent for several minutes, as if she were finally processing the magnitude of what she had done. When she looked up, her eyes were red and swollen. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you need to know that Michael manipulated me from the beginning. He researched all your financial information. He forged your signature. He convinced me it was a good idea. And does that bring back my peace of mind?" I asked coldly. "Does that erase all the messages where you mocked me? Does that change the fact that you planned to steal another $200,000 from me?" Her face fell completely. She knew I had all the proof of her cruelty. "Mom, I can testify against Michael. I can help put him in jail for longer. Please, give me a chance to fix things. A chance to fix things." As if destroying her mother's life was something that could be fixed with a late apology. Just then my phone rang. It was Prosecutor Stephen, with news that filled me with satisfaction. "Mrs. Deborah, I have excellent news. Michael has decided to plead guilty and cooperate with the justice system. This means your case will be resolved much faster and he will receive a sentence of 12 years in prison." 12 years. Michael, the mastermind behind it all, would pay with 12 years of his life for robbing me. But there was more. "I also have to inform you that your daughter has rejected the offer to plead guilty. Her lawyer says she's going to trial claiming she was manipulated. Sarah was going to trial. That meant everything would become public. Every document, every message, every piece of evidence of her betrayal would be exposed before a court and the media. Her humiliation would be complete and final." When I hung up the phone, Sarah was looking at me in terror. "What did they say?" she asked with a trembling voice. "They said Michael pleaded guilty and you're going to trial. Congratulations, dear. Your case is going to be broadcast live on television." Her face went completely pale. "No, Mom. If this goes on TV, my life will be ruined forever. No one will ever hire me again." Her life was going to be ruined, exactly what she had planned to do to mine. "Sarah, when you decided to use my information to steal $750,000, did you think about how that would ruin my life? When you planned to put me in a nursing home, did you consider my dignity?" Her tears no longer moved me. I had cried too much over her betrayal. That night, after Sarah left defeated, I decided to do something that filled me with power. I organized a press conference. Vanessa, my digital consultant, had coordinated with several major media outlets for me to tell my whole story unfiltered. The press conference was held in the lobby of the same building where the stolen apartment was located. I wanted it to be symbolic. The victim reclaiming her space, her voice, and her dignity. The journalists arrived in droves, television cameras, photographers, radio reporters. When I began to speak, my voice was firm and clear. My name is Deborah. I'm 68 years old, and my own daughter stole $750,000 from me to buy a luxury apartment while planning to put me in a nursing home to sell my house. The silence in the room was absolute. I showed every piece of evidence: the forged documents, the screenshots of the cruel messages, the evidence of the plan to steal more money. The journalist took notes frantically, while the cameras captured every detail of my testimony. The question that impacted me the most came from a young female reporter. Mrs. Deborah, what message would you give to other mothers who might be going through similar situations? My answer came straight from the heart, that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, that age doesn't make us easy victims, and that when we are betrayed, we have the right to seek justice, no matter who the betrayer is. The video of the press conference went viral within hours. Justice for Deborah became a national trend. Thousands of people shared their own stories of abusive children, of relatives who had betrayed their trust of elders, mistreated by their own families. But the most satisfying moment came when I watched the news that night. The case had made it to the main programs, and all the channels were showing Sarah's photo next to the word fraud in red letters. Her face was being seen by millions of people as that of a criminal who had betrayed her own mother. The next day, Sarah's lawyer contacted me desperately. Mrs. Deborah, my client wants to change her plea. She's willing to plead guilty if you drop the civil suit and accept a financial settlement. Too late. Tell your client I've already made my decision. This is going to trial. Rachel congratulated me that night on my strength. Deborah, I'm proud of you. Many women our age would have stayed silent out of shame. You chose to fight and reclaim your dignity. She was right. I had chosen to fight, and I was winning. That night in the apartment that legally belonged to me, I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted to myself, to the 68-year-old woman who had shown that age is just a number when it comes to defending what is right. The day of the trial arrived with a media frenzy I had never imagined. The area outside the courthouse was packed with cameras, journalists, and people who had followed my case on social media. Many women my age had come to support me, carrying signs that said "Justice for Deborah" and "Children don't own their mothers." When I arrived at the courthouse, dressed in my best suit and accompanied by my lawyer Daniel, the crowd began to applaud. It was surreal. A 68-year-old woman turned into a symbol of resistance against family abuse. The cameras followed me as I walked to the entrance, and I kept my head held high. Sarah arrived minutes later, accompanied by her defense attorney. She looked haggard, had lost a lot of weight, and wore dark glasses to hide her swollen eyes. When the crowd saw her, the boos began. "Thief! How could you do that to your mother?" The shouts were deafening. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. The judge, a serious man named Thomas Herrera, explained that the case would be broadcast live due to public interest. "This is a case that has touched society," he said firmly. "Justice must be transparent." When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with a firm step. Prosecutor Stephen guided me through the whole story, from the initial call from the bank to the discovery of the plans to steal more money. My voice didn't tremble once. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind for months. "Mrs. Deborah," the prosecutor asked me, "how did you feel when you discovered that your own daughter had forged your signature?" My answer echoed throughout the courtroom. I felt as if I had raised a stranger. As if 68 years of life, 40 years of work, and 30 years of maternal sacrifices had meant nothing to her. The most devastating moment came when the prosecutor presented the screenshots of the messages where Sarah mocked me. He read them out loud in front of the entire court. "My mom is so dumb, she still thinks it was just the apartment. Michael says we can get at least another $200,000 out of her before she figures it out." The silence in the room was deafening. When the cameras focused on Sarah, she looked completely destroyed. She knew those words condemned her, not only legally but morally, in front of the whole country. The judge looked at her with an expression of deep disgust. But the worst came later, when the prosecutor read the message where they plan to put me in a nursing home. When she's no longer useful for loans, we'll put her in a nursing home and sell her little house. That area is becoming valuable too. Several people in the audience gasped in outrage. An elderly woman shouted, "What a monster!" Sarah's defense attorney tried to minimize the damage, claiming she had been influenced by Michael. But the prosecutor had one more surprise. He had obtained recordings of phone calls where Sarah talked with friends after discovering the fraud, laughing at my naivety and bragging about how easy it had been to trick me. In one of the most devastating recordings, Sarah told her friend, "My mom is so desperate she even apologized to me for suspecting. I told her we were family and she bought the whole thing. Old people are so easy to manipulate." The voice of my own daughter sounded cold, calculating, completely devoid of filial love. When it was Sarah's turn to testify, she was visibly trembling. Her lawyer had prepared her to show remorse, but the prosecutor destroyed her during cross-examination. "Miss Sarah, is it true that you plan to steal more money from your mother after the apartment? I never wanted to," she stammered. But the prosecutor interrupted her by showing more evidence. "Is it true that you referred to your mother as so dumb?" On multiple occasions, Sarah began to cry, but there was no turning back. "Is it true that you planned to put your mother in a nursing home to sell her property?" Each question was another hammer blow to her reputation. The prosecutor had built such a solid case that Sarah's guilt was undeniable. There was no possible justification for so much premeditated cruelty against her own mother. During a recess, Daniel informed me that several television channels were already airing specials on the case. "Mrs. Deborah, your story is resonating with millions of people. You've received over 50,000 messages of support on social media. The public support was overwhelming. Women of all ages shared their own stories of family abuse, ungrateful children betrayals they never imagined possible. My case had opened a national conversation about elder abuse and the limits of unconditional love. When we returned to hear the verdict, the courtroom was completely full. Judge Herrera had deliberated for 2 hours, and his expression was serious. In all my years as a magistrate, he began, "I have rarely seen a case of family betrayal so calculated and cruel. The defendant not only committed fraud," he continued, "but she showed an absolute contempt for the dignity and well-being of the person who gave her life. Her messages reveal a coldness that is chilling." Sarah was crying silently as she listened to his words. For the crimes of aggravated fraud, document forgery, and identity theft, the judge declared, "I sentence the defendant to 15 years of effective imprisonment with no possibility of parole until half the sentence is served." 15 years. Sarah was 32 years old. She would leave prison a 47-year-old woman with no work references, no reputation, no future. The room erupted in applause as she collapsed in her chair. After the verdict, Sarah was immediately handcuffed. As they led her away to prison, she looked at me one last time with a mixture of pleading and absolute desperation. "Mom, please," she cried out between sobs. "Don't abandon me! I'm your daughter!" Her voice broke on that last word, but it was too late for regrets. The reporters immediately surrounded me as I left the courtroom. The questions came one after another. "How do you feel, Mrs. Deborah? Was there ever a moment you hesitated to proceed? What message do you have for other mothers in similar situations?" I answered with the same firmness I had maintained throughout the process. "I feel at peace," I declared in front of the cameras. "Justice has been served. My daughter did not receive this punishment for being my daughter, but for being a criminal who betrayed the most sacred trust that exists, that of a mother to her child." The words echoed on all the news channels that night, but my legal victory was only the beginning of my complete revenge. The civil lawsuit was still pending, and my lawyer Daniel had calculated damages for over $2 million. "Mrs. Deborah, we are going to recover every cent they stole from you, plus interest, plus moral damages, plus legal fees. Your daughter will get out of prison owing a fortune." Rachel organized a celebration that night at the apartment. We invited everyone who had supported me during this process: my lawyers, my digital consultant, Vanessa, the private detective, even some of the ladies who had come to support me at the trial. It was ironic to celebrate in the same place Sarah had bought with my stolen money. During dinner, Vanessa showed me the statistics from my social media. Mrs. Deborah, you now have over 500,000 followers. Your story has been seen by more than 10 million people. You receive hundreds of messages daily from women thanking you for your courage. I had unintentionally become a senior citizen influencer. The messages were touching. Women of all ages wrote to me telling their own stories. Children who had scammed them, relatives who had abused their trust betrayals they had kept silent about for years. You inspired me to report. My son wrote a 70-year-old woman. Thank you for showing that it's never too late to defend yourself. But the most satisfying part of my revenge was yet to come. Through my legal contacts, I learned that Sarah was having serious problems in prison. Being a white-collar criminal who had betrayed her elderly mother, the other inmates did not receive her well. Mothers are sacred even in prison, an anonymous source informed me. Michael, for his part, had been sent to a maximum security penitentiary where he would serve his 12 years. His cooperation with the prosecution hadn't helped him much when they found out he had been the mastermind of it all. The judges had shown no mercy for a man who manipulated a daughter to rob her own mother. 3 months after the trial, I received an unexpected call. It was the warden of the prison where Sarah was. Mrs. Deborah, your daughter has been insistently asking to speak with you. She has lost a lot of weight, and the psychologists are concerned about her mental state. Mental state. Now they were concerned about her mental state. What specifically does she want? I asked coldly. She says she needs to ask for your forgiveness before it's too late. She has been writing you letters, but we understand you haven't received them. I hadn't received them because I had given explicit instructions to the Postal Service to reject any correspondence from her. I decided to visit her not out of compassion, but to finally close this chapter of my life. I wanted to see with my own eyes what was left of the daughter who had betrayed me so cruelly. I wanted her to see what she had lost forever. The prison was a depressing place, exactly what someone who had destroyed her own mother's life deserved. When they took me to the visiting room, Sarah was already sitting there waiting. The transformation was shocking. She had lost at least 40 pounds, had deep dark circles, and her hair had lost all its previous shine. "Mom," she said with a broken voice, "thank you for coming. I thought I'd never see you again." She looked defeated, completely broken. The arrogant woman who had mocked my naivety was gone forever. "Sarah," I replied firmly, "I came to tell you something very important. I came so you would understand exactly what you lost when you decided to betray me." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "I came to let you know that all these years, while you thought I was a helpless old woman, I had been saving money with the intention of leaving you an inheritance." Her face completely fell apart. "What? What are you saying?" she stammered between sobs. "I'm saying I had nearly $3 million saved that were going to be yours when I died. Money I saved penny by penny over 40 years thinking about securing your future." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked at me with an expression of absolute horror, slowly processing what she had just heard. $3 million, she whispered in disbelief. "All that money that could have been yours, that should have been yours, is now going to organizations that protect abused elders." Sarah began to hyperventilate. "No, Mom, you can't do that. I'm your only daughter." Her desperation was total. "You were my only daughter," I corrected her coldly. "Now you're just a criminal serving time for robbing an old woman." "Please, Mom." Sarah begged me with a desperation I had never seen in her eyes. "Give me a chance to fix everything. When I get out of here, I'll pay you back every cent. I'll work day and night to repair the damage. Work day and night, the same words I had used for 40 years to build the fortune she had despised." "Sarah," I said with a calm that surprised even me, "when you planned to steal more money from me, when you mocked me with your friends, when you decided to put me in a nursing home to sell my house, did you think about giving me a chance?" Her crying intensified, but I continued unfazed. "The difference between you and me is that I did give you chances. I gave you 32 years of chances." I got up from the chair to leave, but she shouted desperately, "Mom, wait, I have something important to tell you." I stopped and looked at her curiously. "Michael told me the truth before they transferred him. He had researched all your finances. He knew you had more money than you let on. He convinced me to rob you because he said you were stingy for not sharing your wealth with me. The revelation didn't surprise me. And does that change anything? Sarah, does the fact that he knew I had money justify you stealing from me? Her face fell even more. No, but I thought you were denying me what was rightfully mine as your daughter, what was rightfully hers, as if my 40 years of work belonged to her by divine right. Do you know what was rightfully mine? I asked her firmly. I deserved to grow old in peace. I deserved to trust my only daughter. I deserved not to have to hire lawyers to defend myself from my own blood. Her sobs filled the visiting room. During all these months, I've reflected a lot, I continued, and I realized something fundamental. I loved you unconditionally, but you only loved me for convenience. When you thought I was a poor old woman, you robbed me without remorse. If you had known I had money, you probably would have manipulated me in other ways to take it from me. Sarah desperately shook her head. No, Mom, I really love you. It was all Michael's fault. But her words sounded hollow after everything that had happened. Sarah, true love doesn't plan to steal more money. True love doesn't mock. True love doesn't plan nursing homes to sell houses. I headed for the door but turned back one last time. I want you to know that I don't regret adopting you when you were 5. Your biological mother abandoned you, but I gave you a family, a home, a future. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. Her cries of "Mom, don't abandon me," echoed down the hall as I walked away, but there was no turning back. I had raised a snake thinking she was my daughter, and now that snake was where she belonged, behind bars. 6 months later, I moved permanently into the apartment that legally belonged to me. I redecorated it completely, erasing all traces of Sarah and Michael's presence. Each new piece of furniture was a declaration of independence, each change a symbol of my rebirth at 68. My social media channel had become a phenomenon. With over 1 million followers, I shared tips for seniors on how to protect themselves from family scams, how to detect manipulation, how to defend themselves legally. I received invitations to speak at universities' community centers on television programs. The money from the civil lawsuits started to come in. $2,300,000 that Sarah would have to pay when she got out of prison if she ever found a job. I donated half to organizations protecting senior citizens and used the other half to create a foundation in my name that offered free legal advice to elderly victims of family abuse. Rachel decided to stay in the country permanently to be close to me. Deborah, she told me one afternoon as we had tea on the terrace with an ocean view. I never thought I'd see my older sister become a senior citizen influencer. We laughed together like we hadn't since we were young. A year after the trial, I received a call from Sarah's lawyer. Mrs. Deborah, my client wants to formally renounce any inheritance rights in exchange for you considering visiting her one more time. Renounce her inheritance rights as if after everything that had happened there was still any possibility of an inheritance. Tell your client, I replied coldly, that I no longer have a daughter. Legally, morally, emotionally. Sarah died for me the day she decided to betray me. The lawyer tried to insist, but I hung up the phone. Some wounds are too deep to heal. 2 years later, on my 70th birthday, I threw a big celebration in the apartment. Everyone who truly loved me came. Rachel, my lawyers who had become friends, Vanessa, who still managed my social media, the ladies who had supported me during the trial, and dozens of followers who had become my chosen family. As I cut the cake, I reflected on everything I had been through. At 70, I had learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, that dignity is priceless, and that sometimes you have to lose a toxic family to find a real one. That night before sleeping, I sat on the terrace and looked out at the sea. The apartment that Sarah had bought with my stolen money had become the home where I finally found the peace I deserved. Justice had been served, my dignity had been restored, and my future was entirely my own. For the first time in years, I smiled looking at the horizon. I regretted nothing. I had raised a daughter who betrayed me, but I had also discovered a strength in myself I never knew existed. At 70, my real life was just beginning. 5 years after the trial, while checking my morning mail on the apartment terrace, I found a letter that sent a chill down my spine. The return address was the State Women's Penitentiary. Sarah had managed to get a letter to me after all these years. For a moment I hesitated to open it, but curiosity won over my indifference. Mom. The letter began with a shaky handwriting I barely recognized. I know I have no right to write to you after everything I did. I know you'll probably throw this letter away without reading it, but I need you to know something before it's too late. Before it's too late. As if time was something she could negotiate. I was diagnosed with cancer 6 months ago. The doctors say I only have a few years left. I'm not writing to ask for your pity, but to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. You're right. You were always right. Cancer. The irony was cruel. Life was collecting its own debt. I continued reading against my better judgment. During these 5 years in prison, I've had a lot of time to reflect on what I did to you. Not a day goes by that I don't wake up thinking of your face when you discovered my betrayal. Not a night goes by that I don't go to bed remembering all the opportunities you gave me that I wasted out of pure greed. Michael died last year in a prison fight. Before he died, he confessed that everything had been planned since he met me. He researched your financial situation, manipulated me into falling in love, and convinced me that robbing you was freeing you from the burden of so much money. I was an idiot, Mom. An idiot who lost the best mother in the world for a man who only used me. Michael was dead. Somehow that news brought me a strange sense of closure. The mastermind of the whole operation had paid for his crimes with his life. Divine justice had completed what human justice had started. I know it's too late for apologies, the letter continued, but I need you to know that for these 5 years I've been donating all the money I earn in prison to organizations that protect the elderly. It's pennies compared to what I stole from you, but it's the only thing I can do to honor your memory while I'm still alive. The letter ended with a plea that broke my heart, despite everything. I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I only ask that when I die, which will be soon, you don't hate me in your heart. That you remember even for a second the 5-year-old girl you adopted before Michael, and greed turned me into the monster who betrayed you. With eternal love, Sarah. I left the letter on the table and stared at the sea for hours. 5 years later, when I had already built a new life, when I had found peace, Sarah returned with her illness and her late regrets. But something had changed in me during these years of healing. That afternoon I called Rachel. Sister, I received a letter from Sarah. She says she's dying of cancer. The silence on the other end was long. And how do you feel, Deborah? She finally asked. I don't know. I answered honestly. I thought I would feel satisfaction, but I just feel empty. Over the next few days, Sarah's letter occupied my thoughts constantly. I had built my new life on the premise that she was dead to me, but her terminal illness stirred feelings I thought were buried forever. It wasn't pity I felt, but a strange form of closure I hadn't expected. A week later, I made a decision that surprised myself. I called the prison and requested a visit with Sarah. I wasn't going to forgive her. I wasn't going to reestablish a relationship, but I needed to see her one last time to definitively close that chapter of my life. The woman I found in the visiting room was unrecognizable. Sarah had lost everything. Her hair from chemotherapy, she probably weighed half of what she did 5 years ago, and her skin had that grayish color that only the dying have. When she saw me, she began to cry silently. "Thank you for coming, Mom," she said in a barely audible voice. "I didn't think you would." I sat across from her without saying a word for several minutes. Finally, I spoke. "I didn't come to forgive you, Sarah. I came to say goodbye." Her eyes filled with an infinite sadness. "I know, Mom. I just wanted to see you one last time to tell you in person what I wrote in the letter. You were the best mother anyone could have, and I was the worst daughter in the world." Her voice broke completely. During these 5 years, I continued. I built a new life. I helped thousands of seniors defend themselves against their own children. I created a foundation in my name. I became the voice for the voiceless. Your betrayal paradoxically gave me a purpose I never would have found otherwise. Sarah smiled faintly through her tears. "I'm glad to know that something good came out of all this pain. At least your suffering helped others." She looked genuinely happy to know I had found my way. "I want you to know something, Sarah. I said, getting up to leave. "I will never forget the 5-year-old girl I adopted. That girl has been dead for 5 years, but I remember her fondly. The woman who betrayed me will also die soon, and with her will go the last trace of pain she caused me." I walked to the door but turned back one last time. "Die in peace, Sarah. I am already at peace." Her last words followed me down the hallway. "Thank you for giving me a family, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't know how to value it." 3 months later, I received the official notification of her death. Sarah had passed away in the prison infirmary alone, as she had chosen to live after betraying me. I didn't go to her funeral because she had no family to mourn her. She had died a stranger to everyone who had ever loved her. That night on the terrace of my apartment, I toasted to the 5-year-old girl I once adopted with so much love. I toasted to the dreams I had for her, to the sacrifices I made believing in her future, to the innocence we both lost somewhere along the way. But above all, I toasted to myself, to the 75-year-old woman who had learned that it's never too late to start over, who had turned betrayal into strength, and who had found a true family among strangers who valued her story. The next day, I posted my last video on social media announcing my retirement from public life. I have told my story, I have helped who I could, and I have found the peace I was looking for. I said to the camera, "Now it's time to live the rest of my life in private, surrounded by the people who truly love me." 5 years after the biggest betrayal of my life, I had achieved something that seemed impossible. I had forgiven without forgetting, I had healed without denying the pain, and I had found a happiness that depended on no one but myself. Justice had been served, dignity had been restored, and life had moved on. In the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all, to keep living, to keep being happy, to keep being myself, despite everything they had tried to take from me. My name is Deborah. I'm 75 years old, and this is my story of survival.